So what I like to do is step back, and I'm a father of 5, so I simplify everything in my household. So what I'm going to do is use my fingers to describe what functional medicine is. So I was taught by Dr. Sidney Baker from Yale, and he tried to simplify didn't try. He succeeded in simplifying everything. I guess the really mature practitioners can make things that are complicated become simple. I'm not quite there, so I'll use his model. What he said is that dis-ease is an imbalance. You have too many things that you don't need and not enough things that you do need. So let's say the things that we don't need could be considered irritants. They could be considered things that stimulate the immune system, the environmental surveillance system, to a point of saying, alert and alarm, something's wrong. I'm going to secrete a bunch of chemicals and possibly cause collateral damage. Irritation. What are the things that we get irritated by? Well, some people eat poor diets. Poor diets are inflammatory. They're high in sugar, they're high in rancid fats. They create an environment where our immune system says alert and alarm. Stress. Stress. Who doesn't get alert and alarm when we're stuck in traffic, or we're having a fight with a spouse, or something else is happening to get our heart rate up? Toxins. Diet, stress, toxins. Now, this is the thing we're going to be emphasizing right here for the next hour and a half. There is a pink elephant in the room. Whether you're conscious of it or not, there are chemicals in our environment that are shifting your physiological function. They are binding to normal cells. They're binding to proteins. They are changing who you are. So we're going to cover that in spades. Diet, stress, toxins, microbes. You know about viruses. You know about bacterium. You know about infections. Diet, stress, toxins, microbes, and then allergens. Allergens are things that at one time or another, your body has been primed to perceive those as toxic elements, as harmful elements, as stimulatory elements to your environmental surveillance system, aka immune system. Left side. Hold your hands up, please. Left hand, 5 fingers. Pinky, diet, poor diet. Ring finger, stress. Middle finger, toxins. Pointer finger, microbes. And thumb, allergens. These are the things that can irritate us. These are the things that cause us to have a withdrawal from our health bank account. We want to make deposits, not withdrawals. If we have too many withdrawals and not enough deposits, we slide into a state of dis-ease. So if we look at this side, well, what would be a deposit? What would be something that would build us up physically? Build us up. Literally, build us up. How about nutrients? How about things we need for muscle, like amino acids? How about things we need for normal energy function, like B vitamins and minerals, like magnesium? Nutrients, they help build us up. What happens if you're going and you're getting a bunch of stress and toxins and you have an infection and you don't get sleep? Can you have the flu and get over the flu if you don't ever sleep? Can you modify your stress response if you don't get sleep? So diet, sleep. What about exercise? When we exercise, we release brain-derived neurotropic factor. It helps repair our brain cells. When we exercise, did you know that you heal your intestinal lining? You can be exposed to nasty toxins like PCBs and create intestinal permeability just from chemical exposure. And you know that when you exercise, you'll negate that leaky gut caused by the chemical exposure? So exercise is very healing. It's a deposit in the bank account. So now we have nutrients. We have sleep. We have exercise. What about stress reduction? Mindfulness, meditation, breathing, yoga. Things that actually calm our entire system down. Going from a sympathetic to a parasympathetic response. By the way, When does detoxification occur? Does it occur when you first wake up in the morning, you're ready to go? No. A lot of the rest, digest, detox, and repair occurs at night. It occurs when you are calm. So we need to turn off the sympathetic and turn on the parasympathetic. Now the last one is interesting. This is love and connection. When we calm down our psyche, when we calm down our physical self and our psychological self, we all of a sudden have a greater capacity for repair. So what do we have on this hand? Nutrients, sleep, exercise, stress reduction, love and connection, deposits in the bank account. What happens? We have life in the year 2019. This is stress. This is toxin exposure. This is microbial imbalances. If we build ourselves up over here, we can pull back to a state of balance. Most of us are constantly sliding into a state of disease. We're going to talk to you today about the chemical influences that are happening. Because life itself is biochemistry. We're all sitting in this room. And what are we doing? We're breathing. 10,400 cubic square feet of air every single day. What's in that air? Well, hopefully it's nitrogen and oxygen. And hopefully that's it. But what if there are other chemicals in there? We have to process those chemicals. How long can you go without breathing? About 3 minutes. And then you've made too many withdrawals and you're bankrupt. How long can you go without drinking? What about water? What is water? Water, hydrogen, oxygen, more chemicals. We need those chemicals to have every single cell function in the human body. How long can you go without water? 3 days. So 3 days without water, we're sunk. So clean air, clean water. Where are those in the priority tree of health and wellness in comparison to a gluten-free diet? Where are those in comparison to making sure that you have adequate vitamin D? These are all incredibly important things, of course, as you'll see throughout the entire week. But we cannot exist without clean air and clean water. What about food? We need food. We need it for building blocks. We got to make our muscle. We got to make our bones. We got to power up our mitochondria for any sort of function, whether it's firing neuronal function or firing the heart. We have to have that fuel. How long can you go without food? About 3 weeks. And then we're bankrupt. So if we looked at the true currencies of health, the true currencies of life, we're talking about air, water, and food, aren't we? We're talking about things that not only bring about health, that should be our medicine, but they bring about life. We are gifted with these things. So when we're thinking of functional medicine, we should be thinking air. We should be thinking water. We should be thinking food. How many people are thinking at that level? How many people are thinking, gee, how clean is my air? How clean is my water? And how clean is my food? Because that's where the magic happens. That's where we can bring more deposits and lower more irritants. We can have clean air, water, and food. Who saw this? 2011, American Academy of Pediatrics. It was a policy statement warning us that pregnant women and children are under an onslaught of exposure to chemicals in current life. In 2010 was the last analysis the United States government did on chemical use. And do you know what they found? They found that we are actually getting 27 trillion pounds of chemicals imported or produced in the United States every single year. 27 trillion pounds. That's 74 billion pounds per year. That's 250 pounds per person per day of chemical use. That didn't include fuels, that didn't include pesticides, it didn't include some of the largest classes of chemicals that we would think of. Didn't include pharmaceuticals. So we are getting inundated with a tremendous amount of exposure to foreign chemical compounds, things that are not hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, things that we know what to do with. We know how to utilize. Instead, we're bombarded with chemicals that are binding to different receptor sites, that are binding to our own human cells, and they're shifting our physiological function. What we see is these policies that are here to protect us. The TSCA, for example, Toxic Safety Control Act, was established way back many decades ago and has not been ratified to a point of protecting us. We're getting warned in the conventional literature that we're having too many chemicals that are not safely tested. We see that the rise is happening. By the year 2024, we're guessing that we're going to have a massive increase, a doubling of what we're currently exposed to right now. So while our population increase at about 0.77% per year, our chemical use is 3% per year. So we're going to have a massive rise of chemicals if we continue on the current path. Now, everybody says, no problem, right? There are government bodies who are regulating these chemicals. We have all these safety tests. There's a 90-day window, and they test all these rats and mice, and they make sure that they're not going to harm humans, right? There's some interesting data if you look closely. And did you know that all the rats that are being tested for toxicity of particular chemical exposure are being fed rat chow? And the rat chow would be some of the worst, most toxic food you can think of. So our controls are getting exposed to toxic chemicals, and then we're determining if when we add additional toxic chemicals, any additional rates of cancer, cardiovascular disease, neurological decline, whatnot. But our controls are not clean. They're already contaminated. So it kind of makes you think, well, wait a second. Our safety studies are not done with clean controls. So if we're already getting 20 out of 100 rats with cancer, and we add in some additional chemical, although we're already completely buried in chemicals in the rat chow, well, we only get 21 cases. So it's fine. That chemical's fine. How about this? If you look closely at the chemicals that are being tested on the rats and on the humans, the chemicals themselves are only tested for the active ingredients. Who's seen the trials on glyphosate, for example? Have you seen what's going on right now? The Roundup-based herbicides are now being withdrawn from marketplaces in different countries and different states because they've now been proven to contribute to specific cancers. Well, it turns out that in Roundup, there is an active ingredient called glyphosate that has been focused on. And glyphosate has been tested for toxicity in rats, and they found that glyphosate really isn't that toxic. I mean, yeah, it does cause some cancers, but it's not that toxic. Did you know in these trials, they're uncovering that there are 27 other co-formulation chemicals that are far more toxic than glyphosate in Roundup? Up to 1,000 times more toxic. So while we're being told that we should look over here, here's an active ingredient, it's called glyphosate, look for the toxicity of this ingredient. By the way, we have 27 other things that are proprietary that we don't have to list on the label that are actually far more toxic. So what I'm trying to tell you is that right now, we are looking at the almighty dollar. We're looking at the currency that we know of called paper, silver, and gold. And in the process, we may be sacrificing the true currency. This beautiful clean air, this sparkling clean water, and this life-giving clean food. So anytime we are thinking about what's happening with our clients, on the tip top of your radar after this lecture is going to be toxins. Because we are what we eat, what we drink, what we breathe, what we touch, and what we cannot change the shape of and eliminate. Change the shape of and eliminate. So we get exposed to 87 plus thousand different types of industrial chemicals. 87,000 plus. And we can't necessarily metabolize based on our genetics, our nutrient status, our mood, our stress levels, what foods we're eating. We cannot metabolize, we cannot biotransform, we cannot change the shape of some of these chemicals. Therefore, they stay in our bodies and they become us. So what are we going to talk about? How do you change the shape? There are three primary processes we're going to be discussing today. One is going to be exposure. What are you coming in contact with? What are you breathing? What are you putting on your skin? What are you drinking? What are you eating? What are you thinking? What are you bringing in? What are you exposed to? What is your exposome? Then we're going to be talking about how do we change things. Once we're exposed to something, I want to get it out. That's not something that's going to serve me. Let's get it out. So how do you transform a certain shape into a different shape? Because in life, we're dealing with something called information. One particular form binds to another form via attachment, receptor site, substrate. And in that process, something changes downstream. And then that changed substance binds to something else. And that changed substance binds to something else. I'm talking to you. You have these little cilia in your ear. The wavelengths from my voice is changing the shape of the cilia. Once that's changed the shape, it's going to release different signaling molecules. It's going to travel to your brain, which is going to release different signaling molecules. It's going to travel. And you're going to start thinking, wow, this is weird. This is scary. This is cool. Whatever you're going to be thinking. Changing shape, information. So we're going to be talking about how to change the shape. And then once it's changed, your body has this amazing capacity to get rid of things. You can cry, you can pee, you can poop, you can sweat, and you can get rid of things that you do not need. So three primary things. What are they? Exposure, transformation, elimination. So your total toxic load is going to be what you're exposed to, you cannot transform, and you cannot excrete or eliminate. All right. So we're going to define first what this toxicant might be, recognize where the exposures may be, either on high levels or chronic low levels. We're going to analyze, we're going to access the knowledge surrounding how to transform things. Then we're going to develop a strategy for assessing how much you may be exposed to. And then we're going to minimize, we're going to talk about how do you get rid of exposures, how do you transform things more readily and excrete them from your body. So if ultimately you are what you hold on to, how do you get rid of some of that stuff? Implement a foundational detoxification protocol. So IFM has great tools for you. And I'm going to highlight those tools today. All right, so a toxicant is basically something that changes shape that doesn't serve you. Ha, that was easy. Something that pulls out of your deposit towards a withdrawal. Exposure can be through ingestion, inhalation, absorption, injection. Did you know that when you go into a grocery store, those receipts actually have a little layer of BPA on them? And every time you touch a receipt, you can actually absorb BPA through your skin. If you have a hand sanitizing agent or a lotion that you put on before you go to the store, and that has what's called a dermal penetrating agent in it, then all of a sudden you absorb 100 times more of the BPA than you would if you had not applied that hand sanitizer or that lotion. 100 times more. So already the BPA concentration on a receipt is about 2,000 times that of anything else you're ever going to be exposed to. And then when you absorb 100 times more through your fingers, you can actually then, a few hours later, take a blood draw from the arm, and you can see the BPA in your system from your hand. So you absorb through your skin. If you do not want to eat your cosmetics, if you do not want to eat your lotion, then don't apply that because it will end up in your bloodstream. So types of endogenous toxicants. Well, we not only have the stuff that are on the outside of the body, we have things that we're processing from the inside of the body. By being a person who breathes oxygen all the time, we will produce superoxide. We will produce what's called oxygen radicals. It's just part of the process. Anytime you run into the mitochondrial respiratory chain, you're going to be spinning off these little toxicants. We also have gastrointestinal detoxification. Did you know that estrogen itself, processed through the liver, will create some toxicants? Did you know when you have gut bugs that are producing byproducts of your food, some of those byproducts will be considered toxicants? How do you feel if you end up with a bunch of die-off, right? Who's done like a yeast or bacterial die-off protocol, right? Where you're trying to kill gut bugs. Oh my gosh, you joint pain, fatigue, right? So we're constantly, it's not just from the outside, it's constantly from the inside. If we're eating rancid fats from our diet, if we're consuming lots of sugar, what does sugar do? Who's had a lollipop? Come on. Who has 5 kids and has lollipops stuck to furniture, right? Okay. Sugar is sticky. Sugar, in high concentrations, comes out of solution and sticks to things. Have you heard of anything called hemoglobin A1C? What is that? That's a protein, hemoglobin, with sugar stuck on it. And because now the sugar is stuck on it, what happens to the hemoglobin? Hemoglobin changes shape. What does the immune system do with a protein that has a changed shape? You understand, right, that immune cells do not have eyes. So immune cells dock onto substances and they look at the shape. If the shape is not the right form, it can't mate with it well. And it says, something's wrong. Alert and alarm, launch and attack. HbA1c, elevated blood glucose elevated, stuck sugar proteins. Proteins, malshapen. Malshapen proteins excite the immune system. Alert and alarm, foreign invader. Something is wrong. This is the respiratory chain. This is where magic happens, by the way. I don't know how many of you do gene analysis, but you'll see some of the vast majority of the population has some sort of gene variance in complex 1, complex 2. They can't produce enough energy. You start adding in toxic agents and you start depleting nutrients and all of a sudden you have everybody who's chronic fatigue. So we need to look at this ETC, electron transport chain, and support the heck out of it. We got to make sure we reduce the amount of toxins so we can not have damage to the ETC, and we have to support the nutrients that are needed here. But my gosh, constantly all day long, there's something called reactive oxygen species that are spinning off of this, damaging the mitochondria. If we don't have enough riboflavin, if we don't have enough niacin, if we don't have enough coenzyme Q10, if we don't have enough alpha-lipoic acid, we can't keep this thing running. So there's constant toxic exposure inside every single cell. You're going to see later on, there's a magic antioxidant that protects this as well. In every single cell, there's an antioxidant that's about the same level that would be intracellular glucose. We have one antioxidant that's in such a high concentration that as soon as the cell doesn't have enough of it, it starts to kill itself. Anybody know what that is? We'll get there. Imbalanced metabolism. So what happens is sometimes we have genetic variances, sometimes we have nutrient deficiencies, and so we'll produce more toxins. Homocysteine is a toxin. Vasospasms of the vessels can cause all sorts of issues leading to cerebral vascular disease. Are you all tracking homocysteine, by the way, when you're concerned about stroke and cardiovascular disease? It's a nutrient-associated toxin. If you don't have enough B6, B12, folates, and choline, or trimethylglycine, then all of a sudden you form toxins. We can have minor enzymic polymorphisms, which we're going to talk about, called SNPs. And you can have urea cycle abnormalities building up ammonia. That could be due to an amino acid or magnesium insufficiency. So what I'm trying to tell you is, it's not just things from outside. You're producing toxins every single second of every single day inside every single cell. So detoxification is not just pesticides. It's not just pollution. It's life. Types of endogenous toxins, of course you know pesticides. You see the fogger planes coming through. You hear about the Roundup. You know about industrial compounds, toxic metals, plasticizers, asbestos, combustion, incineration pollutants. Guess what one of the most persistent pollutants one of the most damaging pollutants is. It's called dioxin and furan. Where do you think the dioxins and furans come from? They come from incineration of plastics. Which industry is constantly incinerating plastics? Because we're concerned about biohazard risk. Medicine. Synthetic medications and natural phytochemicals. Who's heard that British medical journal article that determined that maybe the third leading cause of death in the United States may be medical error because of certain chemical exposures? We're going to talk about why. So there's lots of different things that we're getting exposed to. We can't forget the psychosocial spiritual aspect. What do I mean by that? Well, think about this. You have clients, they come in and you're doing everything. You're changing their diet, you're changing their nutrients, you're looking at their genes, and you're like, my goodness, why aren't they getting better? I've done everything under the sun. And then one day when the car breaks down, they have to be driven in by their spouse, and then all of a sudden you're seeing them and their spouse on the couch, and you can feel the tension in the room, and this person who was totally vivacious in the previous appointment is now sheltered and cowering, and you go, whoa, how can a person function in a volatile or violent relationship? Exposome. So this is an idea I want you guys to think of. What are you exposed to? What is coming into your life on a daily basis? If you start thinking about this, I woke up in the morning and I breathed air from carpet in a hotel room and scented products that were coming from the cleaning agents. And then I had a cup of coffee, and that cup of coffee came from some plantation somewhere that was spraying a lot of herbicides and pesticides on the coffee. And I used Keurig, and Keurig has those little plastic balls, and the plastic was getting into my coffee. And then I went outside and I started up my car, and I have a brand new car and it's off-gassing. And then I went to fill up at the gas station and I inhaled a bunch of benzene fumes from the... Do you see where I'm going with this? Right? Oh no, please don't kill yourself. Guys, it's okay. We're going to talk about how to process this stuff. We're going to talk about how to reduce the exposure. But consciousness is where it begins. Just so you know, here's the first thing. This is a process of new information, right? When you hear something that threatens your status quo, your first thing that you're going to do is you're going to kill the messenger. Oh, that Tom guy, he's crazy, right? I've never heard of this stuff. This is nuts, right? Second thing you're going to do is you're going to get really sad. No, this can't be true. I got to deny it. No, I can't deal with it. It's not true. No. Forget about it. And then you're going to start pondering, what if this is true? Oh, it's too overwhelming. I can't do it. It's too overwhelming. And then you'll start taking action.